Halló, í mér? Góðan daginn. Þórður vöru- og viðskiptastjóri netlausna hérna í Opnum kerfum. Ég byrja að bjóða ykkur velkomin hérna á þennan morgunverðarfund okkar. Flotastjórnun kerfi frá Cisco og Davra Networks. Með okkur í dag hann Arua Tupinambas. Hann sem sagt sérfræðingur í IoT-lausnum, aðalega tengdu svona transportation og smart cities. Og ætlar að fjalla þessa lausn. Við Morris vorum í fyrra, núna í febrúar vorum á Cisco Live ráðstefnu í Berlín og þar duttum við svona inn á eitt bás þar sem var verið að kynna þessa lausn og hittum Arua. Við áttum að spjalla við hann í svona 5-10 mínútur og við erum nokkuð heillaðir að þessu og fannst þetta tilvalið til þess að koma með hingað til lands og kynna fyrir ykkur. Og nú hann kominn til þess að taka þetta aðeins lengra. En af hverju opin kerfi að sýsla í þessu? Þetta kannski ekki alveg það sem við höfum verið í, en þetta samt sem áður, þetta hluti sem að Cisco í og þar af leiðandi þetta náttúrulega tengist allt netkerfum og þess aftar. Hvað fáum við út úr þessu meðal annars? Ekki við heldur þið. Þetta getur gefið ykkur hagræðingu í rekstri, aukna yfirsýn við flotann og hvernig þið getið aukið nýtingu á flota sem meðal annars. Annars ætla ég að láta Arua kynna þetta aðeins betur. Áður en við byrjum, ætla að fá okkur til þess að, ef þið eru ekki þegar búin að hafa símann setja það á hljóðláta stillingu, þannig að sé minnst truflun úr því. Einnig endilega við skulum hafa þetta svolítið interaktív. Ef þið viljið, þá getið þið bara rétt upp hend og hann bara tekur spurninguna og en síðan líka alveg pláss fyrir Q&A eftir. En ég held að ég sé búin að tala of mikið. Arua, I've talked enough. The floor is yours.
Perfect. Thank you. Hello guys, good morning. My name is Arua Tupinambas. Yeah, very hard to pronounce for anyone who is not a native Brazilian. And today we're here to talk about how data can profoundly impact your business and how data can profoundly impact transportation. Before I get into technology itself, I actually would like to bring back, and sometimes we can get quite stuck into technology and talk about technology, all these new beautiful things, and we forget about the basics and why we're really here. So we're really here because we want to make transportation better. It's basically all of you and all of your customers care only about one thing: get from point A to point B. And I can only help you if I tell you that there is a more effective way from getting from point A to point B. So that's what we're really here for. We're here to talk about new solutions that will help your business and help your customers to find the most effective way to get from point A to point B. And so it's good to just bring it back to the reason why technology exists, which is to solve our problems. And oops. Sorry. Let's talk about some transportation challenges. Obviously, you guys would know much better about your own challenges in your companies, but some of the big challenges we see in transportation could be fuel, just speeds, environmental conditions. So if you could predict better the environment and the climate changes and things like that, you would be able to just save money because you wouldn't take that road that is closed, or if you could predict the route. Another big problem is unnecessary routes. So let's take an example of a waste management company, for example. If you knew the bin wasn't wasn't full, you wouldn't have to be there. So by going there and seeing that the bin is not full and not taking that bin, that's a waste of money. That's a waste of fuel. So it's all about just working on these challenges. And there are many, many transportation challenges. And the key thing is, how can we solve these problems? So how can we act on these challenges? With data. So every interaction, everything that happens, the fact that you woke up this morning, had your breakfast, took a shower on that time, everything is data. You turn on your car, you took 10 minutes to get here, that's all data. And imagine that every interaction that happens in your business, every single journey you take, every single time the driver speeds up or took a wrong turn, that's all data. And how can we then use that data and transform that data to help us in our day-to-day business? And that's exactly where we come in. First, we need to capture that data. And today, there are thousands of sensor manufacturers that will produce sensors to get that data and get that data out there to solve a business problem. But the problem is there's absolutely no standard. In IoT, there's just thousands of data and thousands and thousands of sensor companies, and there's no standard. Então, se eu começar a falar em português aqui para vocês, ninguém vai me entender. I just spoke Portuguese here for a second. You speak Icelandic, I speak Portuguese. We need a standard so we understand each other. That's English. And that's what we do. We take that data, and what Davra does is we take that data and we start getting this data in a format that can be readable, that can be understood, and so we can transform this data into information. When we start transforming this data into information, then things start to happen. But obviously, first we need to capture that data, translate that data to a message that can be read, can be understood, and then starting managing that data. So we get an information out of that data. And the next step is transforming that information into business insight. And that's where it really starts to get interesting for you guys, because you have all this data, and once you start working on this data to act. So what do you want to do if something happens? What do you want to do if that bin is not full? You want to send a message to the driver saying that he can actually skip that part of the journey and go straight to the next bin. Or what are you going to do when the driver speeds up or the weather changes drastically? So that's when we start acting on the data in order to make your business better and more profitable, so you can save money. And that's where I want to start getting into the technology and Davra and what we do. So what is it? Davra is an Irish-based company. It's an Irish company. And it's 5-year-old. It might sound quite young of a company, and it is very young. But in the IoT space, it's quite of a mature company, and that has allowed us to build very strong partnerships with big players that allowed us to go to market, like Cisco, like Intel, and many other big players in the IoT space. So that's our route to market. We can very easily go to market once we partner. Being a small company, we need the big players to position. And obviously, we have that. We are on Cisco's price list and have a very high-level partnership with Intel as well. So that allows us to just ease our way into market. And then how we do that. So that's Davra, and how we do that, all of this data and capturing the data, translating and understanding that data. Davra has built a platform that is completely built for IoT. So from the ground up is a completely flexible platform. So you're not getting a system that will solve X, Y, and Z problems. You're getting a completely open and flexible platform that will then take and work with whatever sensors we have. And we do have out-of-the-box solutions to solve particular problems in transportation. But if the conditions are different, or your business needs a different solution, we can very easily scope that and add new sensors to fit that need that your business have. So it's completely scalable as well for IoT. So if you're talking about 500 vehicles, we can completely scale that up. So that's no problem at all. And then the why. Why would you work with us in your business? And that's where I get into the product, and I'll show you guys a demo on the product. That's how you would visualize your assets on a map. That's a very easy way to visualize. That's exactly what you would see on our product, on our platform. So you have a front end with this mapping. It's a business mapping. Esri, I don't know if you guys are familiar with, but you can very easily just click on the assets, and actually let me. So you can select or unselect assets. Here we see that we have cameras, we see fire brigade, just a typical smart cities deployment here. And you can see all of your assets, what they're doing. If anything happens with that asset, you would see an alert popping up, and the asset would go red. So you can click on the asset, and let's click on this one here. To see exactly what type of things we are monitoring for this vehicle. Then I'll get into the exact things that we are monitoring for this particular vehicle, which is a very common use case for transportation. Here we are tracking the cellular, so data plan and connectivity, RSSI, things like that. We are tracking the health of the device itself, so if it is a router, if it is a IoT gateway, we are tracking the health of that device. So you want to see when the device goes down or doesn't perform as well. So these are, again, all flexible. We can change all of these, the top line metrics and what you're actually seeing here. So everything is very flexible, and it's not like you don't need a developer to do that. You can do it yourself. It's very easy to do. Then for the telematics, we are tracking things like the RPM, speed, acceleration, and CCTV, obviously, cameras, and then we have the reports as well. Then once you want some more deep information on that particular vehicle, you can click on dashboard. And then we'll get into that particular vehicle and all of the metrics that are really interesting for us to see. So for this case, that's a use case actually with, I just put EarthCom because it cannot be shared, but that's with Cisco in the US. And what we did for this customer is a very complete transportation solution. That was, so we are tracking this entire fleet, and for this vehicle, we would have the vehicle information. So we know it's a Ford E250. We know who is driving that vehicle. We know the name of the supervisor, and we know who is the manager for that vehicle. On this, you can actually change the time and change the vehicle. You can, we can very easily get to granular data. So just have the tabs so we can go exactly where we need to go. So for this, we're tracking fuel costs over this period of time. If you want to see the fuel costs for the last 3 months for that particular vehicle, we can do that too. And why that's interesting? Because when we start having this sort of information, so let's see how much that vehicle driven by this driver spent on fuel over the last 3 months. And then you can check that driver if he is spending a lot more fuel than the other drivers, or you can check the supervisor who is having more incidents and things like that. So top line metrics as well, how many customer calls this vehicle had, and how much maintenance costs for this particular time, fuel cost, and customer sales. So let's say we want to go into more detail into this driver. We click on the name of the driver, and it shows up this dashboard, which was done as sort of a scorecard for better training and better rewarding good drivers. And then we have, again, driver's name and ID, and we would have a driver score. Basically, every time a driver speeds up or a driver hits the brakes, that could be a negative score. But to make this very effective, and I guess that's where it starts to get really interesting and unique, because we start getting data from a lot of different sensors and crossing over. When this driver hits the brakes, technically it would be a negative scorecard. But if there was an animal coming towards the vehicle and he had to hit the brakes, that shouldn't be counted as a negative scorecard. So what we do is we automate an alert that every time the driver hits the brakes, we want the camera to be on. And we want to see exactly what was going on in that particular moment in time. So if there was something crossing the vehicle and he had to brake, that's a positive score, because he just had to do it, otherwise he would crash. So that's how we take very different data sources to give you guys the best insight that we can. Then we are tracking, obviously, driver proficiency, just for training purposes. And that's, again, only one example of how we can actually get data to provide insights. We're also doing sales versus customer satisfaction. And so when sales go way up there and customer satisfaction is way down there, there's something you can work with your crew so you can improve that. So basically, we just put this on a chart like that, so you know what drivers are. They should all be here with high enough sales and customer satisfaction high enough as well. And for all the others, you can train them up and just work with them so we can increase that. And over here, so it's all about building this, and again, a completely flexible and completely customizable. You can click here, change your dashboard. So if you want to see something different, you can very easily come here and select a pop-out, select a chart, and drag, and then include this here. You can play around with driver score versus customer satisfaction and sales, all on the same chart. So a lot of things like that to give a good insight. Now let's check on. Whoa, not that again, right? Yeah, so let's check on a view of a typical fleet. So this, we have a fleet of 16 vehicles, and these are the types of vehicles we have. So we have 4 of these minivans here, and we have 7 of these pickups. And you can see that one of the pickup has an alert. So I want to drill down and find out exactly what is this alert and what is causing that alert. So you click on the driver, and then obviously you see vehicle usage and idling as well. So the time the vehicle was stopped. Actually, a good example of that, the idling and idling alerts as well, is a school bus that we were tracking. So we had 2 big cases with school bus. One is in Ireland, and the other one is in Texas. And they have very much the same needs. They needed to track the time that the bus driver spends talking to the parents once they once they pick up the kids and once they drop off the kids. Basically because there was a very good interaction between the driver and the parents of the kids. So the driver was responsible not only for driving the kids to school, but because it's a long journey, he was responsible to talking to the parents just how the kid is doing and how he's performing in school. So give a feedback to the parents. And for that, we needed to track the time that the vehicle spent idling, which is just stopped picking up a kid. And to do that, we actually needed 2 sensors. We didn't get that information from the engine of the vehicle. So we needed to combine RPM and speed. So every time RPM was below 800 and speed was 0, they're considered idling. So with these 2 metrics from 2 different data points, we could then identify when the bus was driving. So every time the bus was driving for longer, the bus didn't stop for long enough, we could send alerts saying why you didn't stop, or even talk to the driver, so the school could really understand what was going on. As well as that, another point of this same case that was very interesting was Twitter alerts. We activated Twitter alerts for when the parents of the kids, they follow the bus Twitter, and every time the bus was late, we would send a tweet to the parents, because I guess a school bus being late to pick up your kid is only a bad thing if you don't know about it. Because then you're rushing to go there, and then you get there and the bus not there, and you're like, oh. But if you know before, and okay, we're going to be 5 minutes late, it's actually a good thing, because then you have more time to prepare the breakfast. You have, like, you can chill. So once you know, and we could do that, integrate with Twitter, so we could tweet the parents so they knew exactly where the bus was, or if it would be late or not. So that's a good way to transform a problem into something positive for the end user. But going back on this vehicle with a problem, you click on the vehicle, then it would give you a very, very deep insight on that vehicle. Now, for this, we partner with an analytics company, which again is another good part of the platform. We can integrate with many different systems, and pretty much all systems, because we just work with open APIs. So for this, we integrated with an analytics company called Cognalytics, and we were able to do things like that. So we have the vehicle registration on the left-hand side, then the repair probability for each vehicle. That is, what is the probability this vehicle will break down over the next month? And if it's above 12%, that's an alert. We have vehicle at risk, and that vehicle was one of the vehicles that was at risk. And we see the vehicle, we see the fault, so what was happening with that vehicle. And you can schedule a maintenance from here, or you can automate a maintenance call. So that's the kind of things that are very powerful. When you start taking your fleet and just really getting in there and understanding how it works, understanding all of the aspects, and really getting this data to create insights, that's when we start changing at the transportation industry. And then just another case, and again, transportation. I could be talking for ages about transportation cases we've done around the world, and I'm very happy. We're going to have a Q&A after this, so I'm very happy to answer to all of your questions, how we do that. I know this is kind of it's very high level, so if you want to know more, I'm very happy to talk to you and how we can work together to solve some problems you might have. If we do have a solution, I'll tell you we already have a solution. If not, we can work something out. So just, I'll be very happy to talk to you guys later on. That's another case in London. And that's, again, we're working with the city cameras and the stations for safety and security reasons, but also it's really station as a service. So we're working with the government to provide information on the station, provide ads and smart ads at the train station, and obviously physical security. So you have one guy who is monitoring all of these cameras and who is just looking at them at his office. And once things start popping up, once you see an alert or you see something that is unlikely to happen, we would make the camera go red, and you could check exactly on what camera, so you can better view and better control the station. So that's again an interesting use case that goes a little beyond transportation, and I guess that's what we want. We do want to think about the problems we currently have and how we can solve them, but we also need to think about how is the industry going to look like 10 years from now. So if we want to be in business, and if we want to be really successful in 10 years' time or in 20 years' time, we really need to pay attention to where the industry is going, and having a system that is completely open to new technologies and new systems, new sensors, that will allow you to have the flexibility you need to change as you need to change. I don't know if you guys seen the IKEA kitchen of the future. The kitchen of the future in IKEA has no storage. They have no storage because they say people are not going to store food at home anymore. They will just order the food and eat as the food arrives. Now, think about how this will impact transportation. I don't know how much I agree with that, by the way, but in 2025, IKEA says that we will have no storage in our kitchens anymore. People will order food as they need to eat. Now, if we have a transportation company and we know that's happening, how can we adapt so we can be a part of that market? Because that's huge. So this is the type of things that an open system would help you guys with, just identifying the new tendencies and going there and maximizing and unlocking the full IoT potential. And then the last, I'd like to give you guys just some food for thought as well, and this is a huge project we did in Ireland with low power one technology. That's a project with Orange, Nokia, Cisco, Actility, just big players, and basically we flooded Ireland with connectivity. If you guys never heard of low power one technology, basically, when you have a small little sensor that doesn't transmit a lot of data, it's not a camera that you don't need a large bandwidth to do that. We can track through low powered one, which is very low bandwidth and a very long range. So these routers can take up to 20 miles around. So that is massive. So for cases that don't necessarily need a large amount of data to be sent, it's quite interesting, because for large areas we cannot just create a mesh network. That's too expensive. So you wouldn't be able to do it. It's just doesn't justify the cost. So this new technology is changing everything, and especially these main areas. Smart and connected waste management. Again, these little sensors that go inside the bins, they don't need a lot of data. They don't consume a lot of bandwidth. So you don't need also a lot of information to going back and forward. You just need to know if the bin is half empty, half full, or empty. So for all of these new technology would be very interesting, because it just makes it affordable. Smart parking, again, you don't need a large amount of data. Smart metering, and I think that's an interesting one for Iceland, just to better identify floods and better identify environmental conditions. These are all sensors that are very, very small and don't take a lot of data, don't need a lot of bandwidth to communicate. So you could have large areas sending small amounts of data for a lot cheaper. And precision farming, identifying what is it with sensors like temperature sensors, humidity sensors, moisture sensors, and things like that, and just being able to have these on an app that will send alerts saying, yeah, the soil is too wet, we don't need to turn on the water. So things like that can make a huge difference. So this is really an overall smart cities case, but it's interesting for us to see that this is happening, and Iceland is quite like Ireland. It's an island in the middle of the Atlantic, so we could replicate what was done in Ireland, in Iceland, and help out a lot of businesses in these areas. So that's it. At the end, I would like to get you guys thinking about really how can then data impact your business, and what are the challenges you currently have that we could possibly better understood and act on it if we only had the capability to capture the data, manage, analyze, and feed that data back to you in a way that can be understood. So that's me, guys. Thank you very much for listening. Yep.
Can you elaborate on the fleet management component? I mean, what are you collecting? How are you collecting it? How are you presenting the specifics?
Absolutely.
Specifically on the fleet management side, how are you collecting the information? How are you presenting it? How are you extracting the business value that is really relevant here? For to kind of get the specific business value out of a fleet management component.
Absolutely. So I guess for a fleet management, we have, again, very different cases based on different needs. For example, the case with Cisco, we have on Cisco Validate Design, so what is validate and ready to go with Cisco. We used a sensor that is called, since 1996, all vehicles need to have a port that is called, if they are heavy vehicles, they're J1939 port, and if they're small vehicles, it's an OBD. Basically, once you plug in this little sensor in the engine of the vehicle, you start extracting data from the engine of the vehicle. So we're tracking over 10,000 data points from vehicles that way, and this little sensor connects up to an IoT gateway. So an IoT gateway basically would be something like a Cisco 829, a router, or a device that has some sort of intelligence on it. And basically why we need that? Because if we start tracking the data from the data point in this vehicle, we just start sending a lot of data into the cloud, and that wouldn't be what we want, because you start sending a lot of irrelevant data into the cloud. So we need an IoT gateway in the middle, so we track the data and filter the data at the edge device. So at this edge device, we can track data and decide what's relevant and what's not relevant. It basically runs Linux or iOS, and we can run our application into this edge device. So once data is relevant, is good to go, we send to the cloud to be managed and analyzed. If data is irrelevant, we just dump that data. For example, just a driver going on like 40 kilometers an hour, that's something that you don't really need to track all the time. You don't need to be sending data every 5 seconds saying 40, 40, 40. So once it speeds up, it goes 85, I want to know. So that we have this IoT gateway. And then from this IoT gateway, this connects over serial port, or it could be, again, we're very agnostic in terms of the communication system. It will, if it's a Cisco case, it will connect over serial port. If it's another, it could connect straight. the sensor could have 3G and know when to send data, but if it's, let's talk about this case. We run our application in the router via serial port, then we send back via 3G or 4G.
I'm not talking about the connectivity of interfaces.
Okay.
It's more like, what the portal, your application. You're saying that you have a platform, which is providing those kind of information. How does that look? I mean, do you have an example of how, for example, the fleet management solution would look like for a company? Apart from this, in more specifics?
That's kind of how you visualize the data. You can. So again, because the platform is completely flexible, you could have this on an app, on a tablet or on a smartphone. So you could have the platform looking like this, or you could be completely flexible. So for this case, it looks like this. A guy in a management room would have access to up to 22 screens like that, and he would have a full visualization of their fleet like that. Then he could also be looking at a map, which is interesting as well, because if you're managing, let's say, 100 vehicles, and you see all your vehicles moving around, and then once a vehicle is, it's exactly like that, by the way, and once a vehicle has an alert, it pops up a red alert, and you check on the vehicle, and so the platform is exactly like that. So you'd see the pop out and work it like that. So that's how it looks like as a default. But if your business want to visualize differently, we can also do that and create apps, and very flexible. Does that answer?
Eitthvað með fleiri spurningar?
What if the vehicles don't always have the same driver?
So if the vehicles don't always have the same driver, then I guess you wouldn't really be able to track the driver this way we're tracking based on the vehicle. But you could have, there are cases where you have an RFID tag or a card. The vehicle has a card with RFID. He taps in, it's his, he's driving. So even though he's driving different vehicles, you can track the driver through his ID and know exactly how he's performing.
And you have GPS-based guidance?
Sorry?
GPS-based guidance. So like SoundCloud, if you cross one GPS point and SoundCloud after it.
Yeah, no, we do that. That's actually a quite basic function of the platform. We manually do with like no programming, out of the box function. They just tags where the vehicle is going. So if the vehicle, we can geofence as well. So if the vehicle breaks its route, it goes where it shouldn't go. We just tag the route, and you'd be able to click on the replay of the route, or even automate alerts, like if the vehicle goes outside the route, I want to turn on the camera. But if you don't want to have a case with camera, you can just tag a route and then go back, click on the route, and you know who was the driver, what was the speed at the moment, and all the information at the moment.
I mean, like, can you have like a set of predefined route?
Yeah.
With target points that you can trigger at those target points, like a sound card and a DVD disc?
Yeah.
Where you can do that?
Yeah. Do you have a?
Store the sound card. You store it in box and power, or you store it in how?
The replay of the route would be. I didn't quite get your question. Based on what I'm understanding, it's just you want to tag the journey in particular points of time or particular locations.
On the predefined route,
scheduled in like some sort of dashboard, and when the car reaches one point on a GPS point,
Yeah.
then it triggers a sound file that will play automatically inside the bus.
Yeah.
So, like, if you look to your right, you will see blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, like for smart hats and things like that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we do this locally. So we run this application on the IoT gateway that just tells, once you reach this part of the journey, I want you to turn on the ad for everyone to see.
Hi, you say that you connect to the port on the engine of the vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
Can you have a dashboard with
Everything?
With everything, if some failure comes in the vehicle, like overheats, and can you see a live feed of the vehicle?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So that's again just the top line metrics for this particular device, but definitely speed, vehicle engine overheat and vehicle usage. So this is because we're taking so much data out of the vehicle. We need to identify first what is relevant for the company. So if you want to see when the vehicle overheats, we can check that through the OBD, because that's the standard feature on these J1939 and OBD2. So we can get engine temperature. So based on that, we can just have it there when it overheats. I want to be notified and I want to see what's going on.
How about licenses? I know that some companies don't allow these computers to connect to the port on the engine.
Yeah, that's actually a law that since 1996, the manufacturers of the vehicles, all of EU, need to be able to just share this data, basically.
Yeah, but if the vehicle is warranted for some, like say, 6 years.
Sorry?
If yeah, if you buy a car, new bus or something,
yeah,
it's warranted from the company like for 6 years or something.
Yeah,
and then you cannot, in some vehicles, get permission from the company to connect to the main computer in the vehicle. Is that?
That's something we see sometimes, but not in Europe. In Europe, we have never had a problem with insurance. Now, in Latin America, I used to look after a Latin American market, and that's pretty bad, actually, because the vehicle manufacturers just block, and they don't let you do anything with. But in Europe, they need to be able to release this with no problems at all. But before a deal like that, obviously, we could get in touch with the vehicle manufacturer and just make sure they know, but it's a law in Europe that they need to provide this information, or you need to be able to get into your car, plug an OBD on this, and you get information yourself about that vehicle, and that wouldn't affect insurance. Now, we did have some issues with that in Latin America, but that was the only place we seen that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hefur fleiri með spurningar? Ef ekki, þá langar mig að þakka Arua fyrir.
Thank you.
Við eigum ennþá slott með honum ef við viljum taka aðeins dýpri fund í dag og á morgun. Hann verður hérna á morgun líka. Þannig að ef þið hafi áhuga á að hitta hann og ræða þetta aðeins frekar og hitta okkur með, endilega hafið samband við mig eða Morris. Það er nafnspjöld á borðinu hérna á leiðinu út. Kippið þeim með og hérna við verðum bara í sambandi þegar seinna kemur. En annars vil ég bara þakka kærlega fyrir komuna og hérna vonandi sjá okkur aftur fljótlega.